What's going on, everybody? I am Winston A. Marshall, aka the Swaggy Blurred, and this is my episode 8 review of X-Men 97. Now, this is a spoiler review, so please understand, if you have not seen this episode and you don't want spoilers, leave, come on back as I break the whole thing down and we discuss it and talk about it. And if you're new to the channel, man, please be sure to go down in the comments, or go down and hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and hit the notification bell, leave a comment after you finish watching the video. Let me know what you think about the episode and all that good stuff. But I'm going to jump right into it, but this is your final warning. Spoilers. Okay. So X-Men 97, episode 8, Tolerance is Extinction, part 1, starts off with us at the mansion. You get this great close-up of the First Class family, the first 5 X-Men with Charles, and you actually see Scott and Jean talking with each other, discussing Cable, and just how there's been that kind of disconnect. Scott wants to connect with his kid. He wants to be able to make up for lost time, but obviously Nate's a little upset that he got sent off to the future. He's a little more concerned about what's going on right now. So the disconnect, there's a disconnect right now, but it will come around. The fact that Scott and Jean have made up after the whole Madeline debacle is a good sign that, things can move forward. But we jump right into what is ultimately the problem, and Cable starts to break down what is happening.
His name is Bastion. In my timeline, he used the fallout from Genosha to get backing for his Prime Sentinel program. But that ain't the worst part. The Prime Sentinels are created using the same techno-organic virus Sinister infected me with as a baby. Xavier's dream came true. Mutants ushered in a bright and peaceful future as its backbone. Why the heck didn't you stop Genosha? I've tried it all, over and over.
Each time we attempt to stop the attack on Genosha, we are temporally pulled away from the event.
Strange. The mystics of Camartage speak of absolute points, events that occur across all timelines. Cable could travel to the very moment Genosha fell, but time would stop him.
Okay, so a lot to unpack there, man. I mean, first of all, to include the Ancient One and to talk about the fixed points in time, we are watching as this team, as the team behind X-Men 97, sees all of the things that are happening in the MCU, in the Fox universe, in all the cases where Marvel has shown up in different properties, and they're connecting these dots. Like, that is absolutely huge to include that conversation about these fixed points in time, because if we end up in a situation with Deadpool and Wolverine where we do reference X-Men 97, it's gonna happen because we've made connections now that this is all genuinely tied to the MCU. And again, the multiverse of madness, that whole idea that we're in this multiversal saga, X-Men 97, while not being in the MCU, could very easily be considered just an alternate universe that maybe gets visited or doesn't. I would not be surprised if it does one way or the other. It'll be very interesting to see what happens. But as Cable explains his story, there was a couple really interesting things. Like, we saw what clearly here looks like Polaris, a much older Polaris, which is, for those that are unfamiliar, that's Magneto's kid. Ironically, it sounds like Magneto's only blood kid, because there was a whole point where, like, Wanda and Pietro are all of a sudden not his kids. They're actually, just like, they were raised by him, but they're not even mutants, which is weird. So Polaris is like his only kid, and you can see it because she has her daddy's skill set as far as Magneto. I don't think she's as powerful as Magneto, but she's no joke, man. She definitely is her daughter's father. But breaks down the plan. You see little Easter eggs there, which I think are kind of fun. Like, you can see those are the 5, the First Class. Those are all of their kind of symbols there. So that's clearly Scott's visor. That's Jean's mask. Iceman symbol. It looks kind of like that might be a wing, and that looks like that might be Beast's I guess you would call it a paw or a claw. But it's really interesting because we're finally seeing, like, Scott and Cable start to argue a little bit, but we're kind of seeing them getting on the same footing, and having Jean, even though she is not technically Madeline, she's kind of like auntie / stepmama, and being like, hey boys, y'all need to chill out, all right? family gonna need to handle some business. We're not doing all this. You raise your voice one more time and see what happens. I will throw both of your asses against the wall.
I know all I need to know. That machine killed my mother.
We need to make sure he doesn't do the same to anyone else.
A couple centuries late in the overprotective dad bit, huh?
Both of you, stop it.
I don't know why that sounded really nasty. It feels like that went on a whole different tear of a category that we don't even want to talk about. So, as all this is happening, we then get the news, a breaking news report that Charles Xavier is indeed alive and he is quote unquote ruling over an alien empire, and all hell breaks loose because now humans are like, this was all a ploy. You did this so that we would feel bad for you, and it's not real. And this is exactly what Bastion wanted. Whether or not he knows that Charles was alive, different conversation. I don't think he necessarily knows that, but this idea of humans turning against them, that they'd be willing to essentially sign up for his Prime Sentinel program, which we'll get to that in a little bit, is kind of what he wants. He needed to get them out of the graces of the public. While this is happening, you ultimately see Jubilee with Roberto. They are out here with Roberto's mom having dinner. They start talking, and Roberto's mom says this.
I'm hosting a fundraiser here for Genosha. Somebody needs to help those poor souls. The X-Men certainly aren't.
We were trying to keep you people from coming after the professor again.
You people? Well, thankfully my guests and I don't believe that a few bad apples spoil the whole bunch.
This party sounds super lame anyway. Come on, Roberto. You have a trust fund, and I have good taste. I think we both could use some retail therapy.
All of this is going on. We end up with Jubilee and Roberto having dinner with Roberto's mom, and she starts saying all sorts of stuff like, oh, we're gonna throw this fundraiser for Genosha, these poor mutants. Like, there's this weird like pity and looking down upon them instead of really leaning into the tragedy. And Jubilee's not here for the shits, especially when she's like, oh, well, just because you have a few bad apples, we don't throw them all out. Like, there's this weird tension where you can tell it's not quite a Get Out moment per se, which I will come back to that in a little bit, but there is this like, I would have voted for Obama 3 times kind of joke here happening where like she supports mutants, but like at a distance. It's not, whatever. Even though she accepts that her son is, it's still kind of like that's okay. That's just your little affliction with your little friends. You'll be fine. It is what it is. So that whole thing, I love watching where this storyline is going, because Roberto is essentially, he was concerned about his parents not accepting him as a mutant and treating him horribly. And instead of that happening directly, he's just watching how that's their baby boy. So that's fine. But the rest of them, they're like, it's just, again, this elitism that is kind of going to keep their distance away from mutants. And I think this is very important because there are different ways in which people would face that kind of adversity. Specifically, Roberto's storyline is more mirroring someone who was queer and came out to their folks. And you get all varying levels. You get the parents that fully accept, you get the parents that don't accept you at all and they want you out of their life. And then you get kind of what happens here where it's like, I accept you, but I don't necessarily accept your lifestyle or your people or anything like that. Accepts it, but doesn't accept it, if that makes sense. All of that's going on. You end up with Jean and Nightcrawler looking over Rogue, and Jean is trying to help Rogue as best she can. And you get a really interesting conversation with Nightcrawler and Jean talking about how Jean and Madeline, while different people, are actually way more connected than people realize, and Jean feeling bad about not being there for essentially her sister.
I should have reached out to her. With the psychic connection we shared, it's as if Madeline's memories are my own. It's odd. I see her son, and I remember him kicking inside me. And Scott listening, and those cravings for oranges with cottage cheese. Just like I remember telling my friend Storm that I wanted him to be born human. But he's Madeline's blood.
I was abandoned by my mother Mystique as an infant. I met Rogue years later. We could have been enemies or strangers. Instead, we chose not to abandon each other, to let go of the past, and simply be family. Blood is blood. Family is a choice.
And then soon after we come back and we realize that, we need to go find out where all of this kind of went down, find out who this Bastion person is, as Cable had mentioned earlier. So the Scott family goes on a trip to investigate. Meanwhile, we end up in a situation where we find out that Dr. Valerie Cooper from the UN is not only alive, she's actually rocking Bastion kind of look, his OZT kind of outfit, and she's talking to Sinister about the whole situation and how mad she was that Genosha went down the way it did. Like, she didn't sign up for that. And then she gets to a point where she actually starts talking to Magneto and begging him, be mad at her, forgive her, anything, to just say something, because Magneto instead is doing this.
Bastion says you haven't spoken a word since Genosha. I didn't know. I swear. I'm sorry. For everything. Forgive me. Curse me. Just please talk to me. You must have something to say.
Which honestly, I don't blame Magneto, man. Like, at this particular juncture, if you were a key element in watching my people getting completely massacred, whether you meant to or not, but especially knowing that for Magneto, and they kept zooming in on his tattoo, his branding from the Holocaust. They kept zooming in on it to just because Magneto is known to be saying never again, all that kind of stuff. And that's what he applies to, what he went through as a Jewish individual during the Holocaust. That's how he feels about mutants, and he fights, to make sure that this never happens. And yet somehow it was able to happen. Now, while this is going on, you get the reporter, Trish Tilby, to come and visit Beast. And when I mentioned Get Out before, again, when we get through this storyline with her, you kind of see what ends up happening. But she comes to apologize and kind of talk it out. And, Beast still doesn't necessarily trust her, but he accepts her coffee and they talk for a little bit. And it seems like maybe he's letting her back into his life. Now, while this is happening on the other side, you end up with the Summers at the Bastion family home. And one of the things that I caught immediately, you see there, that says Stark Expo. When we're talking about the interconnected, woven tapestry that is X-Men 97 to bring Marvel and the MCU as a whole into the fold without it. Again, it is not directly in the MCU, but there's enough references to Marvel as a whole that we are acknowledging this is a universe that the X-Men share with other Marvel characters, and that continues to happen all episode long. There are more and more indicators of acknowledging that the mutants live in a greater world with other heroes and villains. We get to see Bastion's family. We kind of hear the story of how Bastion was from the mom as they all visit. She says something very cryptic. She says, "Oh, he told me not to expect you this soon." And she's like, "Let me go pack up and get ready to go." While this is happening, Bastion gives a whole speech to Valerie, to Sinister, and to various evil leaders around the world. And this is where we get even more cameos. And when I tell you I lost my shit.
So I hand humanity Genosha.
Do not mistake Doom's collusion as indifference to flagrant war crimes.
Next time I'll send memos. But right now, we press on with the rollout.
Your Sentinel program can go wide so long as leaders like President Kelly see the X-Men as allies.
Noted.
Because you got Doom, you got Zemo. There's one left in shadow that I could not figure out. You tell me in the comments who you think that this person is.
And already handled.
We also request Dr. Cooper stay with you to ensure those memos go out.
Nifty. I'll even throw in a tour.
So yeah, I saw this, seeing Doom and Zemo, literally my head just kind of popped when that happened. I was like, oh my God. But I also knew that this was the beginning of what was about to be the end of this episode, because now Bastion starts to show them and to take Valerie through the process of how these Prime Sentinels are made, and what is actually at the core of it. And it really is that techno-organic virus that Cable essentially took with him into the future, it, you know, allowed we're talking about a situation where Nimrod and Master Mold and this techno-organic virus all collectively kind of came up in a little goop-diddy goop, and that Nimrod goop, as we saw earlier in when they were talking to Bastion's mom, infected her. She had a kid, so Bastion was then part robot. He was a technopath, and all of a sudden, you know, his programming as essentially a Nimrod Master Mold offspring of hating mutants kind of kicked in, and he's here to just destroy them. And to that point, the mom shows this painting that Bastion made, which kind of shows the end of days. And you can see there is the Master Mold Wild Sentinel, Godzilla Sentinel, whatever you want to call it, since everybody and their mother wants to correct me about who that was. I get it. I've called it all things. It's been called all different types of things. Get out my face. But this very prophetic painting, and you can see those people floating, and right when that happens, as they're talking about it, the mom then starts to turn into a Prime Sentinel, and that's where we start to get worldwide activation. All of a sudden, people everywhere are turning into Prime Sentinels that have signed up for this program, including, and this is what I meant by get out, including Trish.
He's artistic, my creator. But you see it too. Takes a mutation to beat one. Heartbreaking, realizing you're no longer Mother Nature's favorite. All those years telling us to face the future. Your future. But now... Surrender, mutants.
I gotta talk to Hank about his taste in women.
Bro, when Wolverine said you got a bad taste in women, I immediately thought back to Lil Rel and Get Out, where he's like, "Yo, be careful about the white women, crazy sex parties and all that stuff." When he was like TS mother and A, all of that kind of clicked in when Wolverine said that with one line, which was hilarious to me. But then you get essentially what is an epic battle across the globe as mutants are fighting for their life, and we're mainly just following our X-Men and whatnot. But you've got, Jubilee and Sunspot are now on the run. They went shopping and they're on the run from all the Prime Sentinels there. You've got the X-Men First Class painting is burning in the mansion because it looks like Nightcrawler and with finally Swashbuckling, thank God, and Wolverine are having to tag team an onslaught of Sentinels, which speaking of onslaught, there was a very real possibility that he might be knocking on the door. I don't necessarily think for this season, but we are setting the stage, I feel like. That's a whole other complication that we can talk about in a bit. But again, these fights are absolutely fantastic. You get an awesome moment where we find out Sunspot's actually been training in the Danger Room by himself, and he actually knows how to fly. Jubilee tries to fly but can't quite get it, but Sunspot can. Which was a really cool moment to see. You get the Blackbird gets destroyed, the third one in a couple of months, which was funny. So Hank's gonna be pissed, but Hank's knocked out cold right now. I think he's more worried about trying to live. But you get them escaping in their Porsche, in Scott's Porsche, and look at that at the bottom left-hand corner, the license plate. That license plate, Slim, SL number 1 and then M, is the nickname for Scott. It's mainly said, I feel like, by Wolverine, but everybody kind of calls him Slim every now and again. And I loved, again, nice little Easter egg just implanted right in there. Eventually you get Sunspot and Jubilee crashing into this Genosha fundraiser that Sunspot's mom is holding, and he pleads his case for them that they're about to get killed. And it feels like, again, that child that's like, mom, they're out to get me. And then this happens.
Mom, these killer robots are trying to kill me.
We do not kill mutants. We save them. Stand down.
Meu filho, do what the men say.
And again, that's where I just feel really bad for Berto. Just this idea that he's not truly accepted by his parents, and even if he is, they don't quite get him. And that's kind of the problem. They don't get him, they don't get mutants, all that kind of stuff. We finally get a final shot here of the X-Mansion destroyed, and Bastion shows up, and you know, he's proud of what he's done. He's like, Mom, I did it, all this kind of stuff. But Sinister's pissed. He's like, no, this damn bitch Cooper done let out Magneto.
Had the most profound sense of deja vu. As if past, present, and future didn't matter and never had. Because we always end up in the same ugly place. Magneto knows us better than Charles ever did. Knows we know better. That most of us experience tragedies like Genosha as a bit of deja vu before getting on with our day. But the scariest thing about Genosha wasn't the death or the chaos. It was a thought. The only sane thought you can have when being chased by giant robots that were built to crush you. Magneto was right.
Enough.
Dude, if you ever needed proof about how Omega Magneto is, this dude went to the South Pole and set it off. He literally used his abilities, his magnetic abilities. He was able to amplify them because of the poles, and he sent a worldwide EMP, knocking all of the Sentinels, all of the Prime Sentinels offline, as well as power everywhere. And while that is happening, because again, this is going on in the middle of, like, this battle is coming to a close. Like, you think the Summers are going to die, you think all that kind of stuff, but you get to see all these other cameos as the power goes out. Spider-Man in New York, the power goes out. You can see here the Silver Samurai, and you can see that electromagnetic energy is coming through that yellow line at the top. It's about to knock all the power out there. You get Omega Red, and this is crazy. This might be a tip of the hat of what's to come in season 2. He is trapped and he, you know, put in this cage and kept in suspension. By power going out worldwide, he could potentially get out. So that's definitely coming. So all of this, the power is out, the Sentinels are down. It feels like enough respite that they can try and take the fight to Bastion. And then finally you get a crashing into the building. And here pops out Charles Xavier inside of a Shi'ar ship. And he calls his X-Men, "To me, my X-Men."
To me, my X-Men.
Ooh, there was so much in this. I absolutely love this episode. I think the action is incredible. This is a great setup for our big finale here for the season. So many callbacks, so many references throughout. I'd give this like a solid 4.8 out of 5, man. I'm tempted to just straight give it a 5. The only reason is I still think that my favorite episode, this is pretty damn close to on par, but I still think my favorite episode is Remember It, just because of how layered it is. But every episode of this show is so layered. It really, really is. This idea of you know, complicated families. And so talking about Jean and how she should have acknowledged Madeline, and none of us are dealing with clones, but we do have bonds with our sisters, whether they be stepsisters or anything like that, and what a family means. So Jean is kind of a stepmom to Cable and that whole situation. The idea that you had Charles, the patriarch of the X-Men, has been gone this whole time, and what that means that he's come back now. Are the X-Men going to be pissed when they actually get together and they see him? Again, Nightcrawler caring about his sister who's now in a coma. Like, there's just so much going on. Roberto, we talked about that earlier, but I am just very blown away by how this show has not missed yet. I don't think there's an episode in here that I've been like, nope, I would never watch that again. There's some that I like more than others for sure, but every episode is slapped, and when it needed to slap the most, they don't stop. They do not stop. So I cannot wait for these next 2-parters. I want to know what you thought about this episode, about the cameos. Did I miss one? I got the Spark Expo. I got the various people in the Marvel Universe, the Spider-Mans, Omega Reds, Dooms, Zemos, Silver Samurai. I mentioned all of them. The Slim license plate. What else did I miss if I didn't catch anything on that? Do you want to correct me on any more of the characters that I'm calling the wrong name? Because I didn't. But if I did, tell me. I would like to know. I'm just being very petty right now. And other than that, again, if you haven't, subscribe to the channel, man. Hit the notification bell so you know when I am putting up more content. This came out a little later than I would liked. You know, I'm a little under the weather, so I had to push through. but I just needed some time to recover. I've got the Breakfast AM news stuff coming out later today, maybe early tomorrow, depends on the timing with everything, as well as a new thing that I'm going to be doing as far as just standard commentary. So definitely check that out. I got a few things I need to talk about. I need to talk about this DA in New York. I need to talk about Kendrick completely bodying Drake and how hip hop is back, baby, and Drake, you on the clock. There's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to cover all of that as well. And then obviously all the standard movie and TV stuff. And then obviously on Friday, Capes and Cals over on the Christian Harloff channel. Y'all that are familiar with me are aware of that. So with all of that, I'm going to get out of here. Y'all be safe. I'll see you in the next one, man. Peace.